Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by developing yourself, developing your skills, your habits, your network, and more. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Hayslip, and today it's Peter and I's check-in episode. So every month or so, Peter and I record an episode together. This time, we are sharing stories about bootcamp grads. We've both been doing bootcamps for over 10 years now. We have a whole pile of stories from bootcamps we've been a part of, mostly the bootcamps that I've started or that Peter's helped mentor for, in which we have success stories. We also have failure stories. And then we've got in between where you think someone is not going to do well and they've just been dogging it and eventually they make it. And that's one of the biggest takeaways that we had from this episode is it's true that as long as you don't quit, you'll be successful. And over these last 10 years, I've never once seen somebody who hasn't been successful as long as they persevered through the ups and downs. So I hope this episode is helpful for you and you can identify as someone who is going to do well. And even one thing that I loved about this episode, by the way, is Peter ends up telling his own story in which he identifies himself as being someone who naturally was sort of on the failure path as a bootcamp student. And then he changed. He actually evolved and became the type of person who became successful in a bootcamp and now has the successful career that he has today. So I hope wherever you are in your journey, this episode is encouraging. All right, we're back again with our regular check-in, Aaron and Peter, talking about things. And we got some feedback, although maybe we're going to take part of this feedback to heart today, which is people want to hear us talk more about the stuff that we used to talk more about, which is becoming a software engineer, boot camps, all that kind of stuff. Because we kind of digress a lot into our own lives about businesses and starting businesses, which, you know, it's the same thing ultimately because the business that I have is obviously a boot camp. So, but I'm more thinking about myself as a business owner than I am boot camp students necessarily here in and out. But I wanted to go back to some of the roots of the stuff that we used to talk about. And I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately, which is, and I think we've talked about this about 15 different ways, which is what makes for a successful boot camp grad. And I think it's especially important right now where I think there's some, we talk about this too, this is another topic I wanted to bring up, but some tumult in, like everyone's realizing how hard it is to actually learn to code and get a job as a software engineer. So my question to you, Peter, I'm going to do the same thing, is think of 3 different people who have, and think of actual individuals if you can, who've gone through a boot camp. Because I think both you and I have been around boot camps for forever, like going through our own, being part of the ones we went through as kind of mentor capacity, Parsity, friends, lots and lots of bootcamp grads. So I want to hear about someone who crushed it and like their story a little bit, someone who failed really badly and why you think they failed. And then the third thing, which I think is an interesting one, because I had quite a few people in my brain that were in this category, which were they should not have made it. Like the odds were stacked against them in terms of like, oh man, they're still going, but it's taking them a long time. I'm not seeing this. It's not going well. Oh man, should they have really done this? And then, well, all right, they got a job and now they're improving and they're doing well. And that's all in the past, right? And I was probably somewhere in between personally, like that story and the success one. So I have a lot of empathy for that story. But I think what I want to pull out of this is maybe some themes. I think we've like generalized a lot before in the past, but I want to be really specific. Now, obviously leaving out probably the people's names that we're thinking about. But that was a thought. So that being said, I'm going to start with, you can be thinking about this while I'm talking. I'm going to start with my successful grad. That's probably less juicy, but I'll talk about, I mean, I've got a lot of these. Obviously, we have a lot of all of these probably, if we're honest. But I want to talk about the successful one first and then go through the other ones back and forth. So does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, being specific. All right, so the first one I thought of, and this was literally just the top person off of my head, and I'm probably going to be more liberal about this individual's details because this is the success story. So This person, I haven't not asked his permission. And there's lots of men, lots of women that have the same thing. So I don't know why I thought of him, but he was a firefighter who graduated one of the early cohorts of Parsity, actually. So this is whenever we went online. And for those of you who don't know the story of my past, we had an in-person boot camp in Durham until the pandemic, then sort of made it online, which is Parsity now. And he was successful like right off the bat. I think he might have even gotten a job before the program finished, like the ideal story. Although I can't recall if he was a college graduate. He was fairly young and on paper would not be the type of person that you would pinpoint as like the ideal software engineer in terms of education and all those kinds of things. But obviously the thing that set him apart was before he ever even came to the boot camp, he was sort of losing himself in coding, right? Like he was always doing it and for fun. And I think a side note here, I was thinking about this today, actually. So Jamie, who basically runs a lot of the administrative aspects of Parsity, I was explaining to somebody how she seems to be able to just do more with less time than I can. And I actually thought of like an analogy here with bootcamp students who do well, because I look at a task like, why does it take her 5 hours to do these tasks, but it takes me 10 hours? And my immediate thought was, oh, she's just more focused, right? She has a better focus. And I think that's true, but ultimately she's more efficient because those tasks don't suck as much energy from her, you know? Like for me, I don't know if, and I might be a bad example because I'm probably at the end of the spectrum on the worst at focusing, just to be honest. Like I'll do an administrative task that's heavily, I don't know, like sending emails, writing something up, something that I don't want to do that has to be done. And immediately when I'm done with a small task, if it takes me 20 minutes or so, like my gut reflex is to like celebrate by like watching a YouTube video or doing anything else other than another task. Whereas like I'm pretty certain someone like Jamie doesn't do that. She just moves on to the next task. And so she just batches all it together and in 5 hours she's done. Whereas for me, I'm like, I didn't get it done, I'll do it tomorrow kind of thing. I think people that in coding are like that as well. Like they don't get, it's not a task for them. It's just like this curiosity that gets quenched and they go down these rabbit holes. And these rabbit holes produce fruit, right? Like they're actually learning something. So I think that's this guy for me, is he was set apart because he just did it because he wanted to do it. And he went down rabbit holes. And even when things were difficult, he didn't see them as, he was sort of naive. I think Brian and I talked about this last week in the episode, that like this naivety of like not caring if you suck or not, but literally you're just there for the knowledge of it. You want to learn it, is part of what made him successful. So that's my success story. You have a success story?
Yeah, I thought for sure we would think of the same person, but
Oh
it sounds
man.
like we didn't, which is good. Okay, so my success story, also a Parsity grad, and this person had come to us. He had tried to learn coding on his own a few times, and it hadn't really stuck. And so when he came to Parsity, he essentially kind of made the decision of like, I'm making this work no matter what. And so like the first kind of theme is, I think, determination. This person had some aspects in his background that I think would indicate some fertile ground, I guess, for becoming a software engineer. If anyone's curious what that actually is, something I've noticed in my years in the industry is that people, a lot of engineers, like people I've worked with, have either been into music or into video games. And this
Yeah.
guy was into music. For different reasons, I think. But the similarity with music is basically like, in my mind, you have like a set number of like atomic units, so it's notes. In code,
Mm,
it's like, you have variables, loops, functions. Like you have a set number of like things you can work with, and there you can infinitely like recombine these things in order to create something new. That's the similarity I see with music. So this person had a
yeah.
music background, and I think that helped. But he, in addition to being determined, having a music background, treated it as kind of a discovery process, kind of like you mentioned, not as tasks to be done, but didn't fight the rabbit holes, just kind of came with more curiosity. And we've talked about this a bunch. We call it process over results. We call it other things, but
Yeah.
basically not considering whatever it is just something to get done, but kind of allowing the learning process. I was trying not to say process, but for lack of a better term, allowing the process to take over and kind of just seeing where it takes you, as opposed to like, I've got to get this stuff done, which is kind of a toxic mindset in a boot camp setting, I think.
Yeah.
So this person was super curious, and along with that, like I think just embracing of every aspect of it. So some of you out there may know it's really hard to keep curriculum always 100% up to date because the packages that we use change all the time, and we have to re-record, which we do, but it's not always perfect. And so whenever this person encountered something that wasn't perfect, he didn't reach out and say, "Hey, what do I do now? I don't know how to fix this." He basically just said, "Okay, this is part of it. Like the curriculum isn't 100% there all the time because things change. I'm going to embrace that and just figure it out." And so there's some people, I don't want to step on people who don't do as well, but there's a way of
Yeah.
approaching it where like everything's a crisis. And it's like, why isn't this working? This person took the opposite approach when it wasn't, when it was his code that wasn't working, or when the curriculum needed like a package update or whatever, took everything in stride. And so all these things together, at the end of the program, uh, this person was like in one of the strongest places I've ever seen a bootcamp graduate. For his final project, he learned TypeScript. He like investigated a bunch of new technologies, and then he ended up going out trying to get freelance work at the end and succeeded. And so, just one of the coolest stories I've ever seen from end to end, and I think demonstrated a lot of qualities that you would want in a bootcamp student.
I love it. This is funny. It feels like a trivia game where I'm like, I want to name that person, but because I know
Yeah,
who you're talking about, but
yeah,
we can't do that. That's great. No, I think those are all hit on a few things. One side note about all this is, I just started reading Walter Isaacson's biography of Leonardo da
Musk.
Vinci.
Oh, okay.
No, not
I'm reading
Musk.
the
Not
Musk
Musk.
one right
Actually,
now.
oh really?
Hmm.
I'm curious of that too, but I felt like that was going to be like a gloomier picture than Da Vinci. Da Vinci's old enough to
Yeah,
where we can just see them all the good things and not the bad stuff. But
right.
he's talking about just Da Vinci's unquenchable like curiosity, and obviously he is the definition of a Renaissance man. Was interested in all things and just has notebooks full of thoughts and ideas. But the thing that I keep coming back to is like, how does he have time? Like the rabbit holes, how do they not? Like, how do you distinguish a curiosity rabbit hole that will produce fruit from a distraction? And I haven't answered that question yet, but I think there's some answer there. I think maybe, but that's like a thought that I have moving forward. Is like some rabbit holes are distractions. You know, like when someone's trying to, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like boot camp students ask questions about stuff that I'm like, you just got to move on. Like this isn't important to think about. And maybe that's just having a guide, right? Who can kind of help point you in the right direction. Most of these people have some sort of guide that helps you stay in line with your curiosity. I don't know if you have 2 cents on that.
Yeah, it's harder for me to apply, honestly, to a coding bootcamp standpoint, because in general, my advice would be go down the rabbit holes and see what happens. And I think that was very much the Da Vinci approach, from what I understand, where it was like a lot of his stuff didn't pan out. He didn't finish every painting, like some stuff didn't work.
Yeah.
And I think getting through those kind of things is important for getting to the stuff that does ultimately work. But when you're in a coding bootcamp, there definitely are things where it just doesn't make time, sense to spend time on. So I'd say in our context specifically, you probably do need a guide. But in life in general, I'm pro rabbit hole.
Like it. So err on the side of following your curiosity, because there's gonna
Yeah,
be more fruit that comes from that than there's gonna be less fruit from trying to prevent distraction, which honestly most people are ironically quite distracted when they're not following their curiosities, when they're just trying to. There's a difference between following your curiosity and just medicating yourself with entertainment, Like I think most of
right.
us would be guilty of medicating our boredom or whatever with YouTube videos for entertainment and not YouTube videos for TypeScript, for example.
Yeah. No, I think it's really important for engineers because the best engineers I've worked with were always super curious. And it's like not enough to get the thing working. It's like I want to understand at a deeper level why it's working. And the people that can embrace that mindset, I think will end up doing really well.
Yeah, awesome. All right, the failure example here is harder for me, obviously, to talk about because there's the emotional attachment to not wanting anybody to go through failure. But I think I learn a lot whenever someone doesn't do well, and I think hopefully those individuals learn a lot as well. So mine comes from back in the day at Project Shift. Another individual who, I think in Project Shift, by the way, was the in-person boot camp. There's lots of things that I wanted to learn from back then. I think a lot of the failures on our part as a code school informed how we thought about building Parsity. One of them was, to be honest, like just the weight of having a school that was so expensive and that was in person. It was very expensive tuition, and that was because that's what it costs to run an in-person school with full-time employees, all had benefits and paying for facilities. One of the other negative pieces of this is being in person meant like today the class is about this, tomorrow the class is not about that. So if you get behind, so sorry, like we're all moving on, and like that's how it works. Whereas with being online the way we are, like if you get stuck or you get far behind, like you're okay. Like it's not ideal, but it's not a failure situation. This individual that I'm talking about, actually, and I definitely would not even go near to like tell you any more details about him or his life. I'd say he was a younger person. Not that matters, to be honest. And I think what we realized is to pass the code challenge, he actually cheated. And I don't think it was all his original code. And then we used to have these evaluations, just like we do with Parsity, where you'd have to, pass all the evaluations in order to graduate from the code school. And he was verbatim copying people's code and using it. And I'm not saying like, obviously, yeah, if you cheat, you're going to fail. That's not the point of the story is like, oh, we kicked him out because he violated rules. The point of the story is like, what leads someone to have like the mindset or attitude where they think they need to cheat. Right. And one, if I'm honest, I wish we would have caught this like earlier and identified like this isn't the kind of person, like he's not fit for this, not because like he's not good enough, but because, as you know, it's important that you're well prepared, that you've done a lot of coding on your own before you enter a bootcamp scenario, because you want to be successful. And how do you know if you're going to be successful if you haven't tried it before and succeeded in some ways? So anyways, we ended up having to kick him out because, and this is the only time we ever had to do this, because repeatedly he did this and lied. And we knew he had lied, and we tried to like basically say, hey, if this isn't yours, like that's okay. Just let us know. We want to be helpful. We can't help you unless we know what your actual code is. And then there were even times I think where we said something like, hey, like we tried to like give him openings to just tell us like, hey, we know this is probably not yours. Just, let us know. And then he just continued to. So anyway, but I think the things that contributed to him not doing well before that, right? Because obviously the thing that made him want to cheat was he didn't comprehend what was going on, is probably just the opposite of the successful piece, which is he had this thought that if he just went through this school and earned some kind of certificate, that just by being there or by getting the certificate, which I'll be honest, I think in the beginning of, I forget if it was Project Shift or Parsity, we didn't even have certificates. Like I didn't think to make them. And someone said, hey, do I get a certificate? I was like, oh yeah, for sure. And I just went on Canva and made one. Right. And that's what they are now, by the way. Like they're just something we made on Canva, right? Because like there's no bootcamp certification, and even like a freaking computer science degree. Like no one's ever checked that I graduated college to hire me. In fact, sorry, I'm getting a tangent here, but I probably shared this before, that I think I technically didn't graduate college until like 5 years after I actually graduated, because I forgot to transfer credits from like this community college over where I took summer classes. So I didn't even get my diploma until like 5 years after college. So I've been working as a software engineer already and didn't even have a diploma, and no one checked. So all that to say, someone who thinks that there's any other way to go through this learning process other than the hard way is missing the mark. Like literally you're paid. The great and also terrible thing about software engineering is you're paid because you can do the job, not because you got a certificate, right? Like, and so that means you don't need a certificate, but it also means if you have one, it doesn't have any value, right? The only value that it has is in the actual process that it gave you to do the skills, you know?
Right.
So anyways, that's my example. It's a pretty hardcore example. There's also some other like smaller examples, but I thought, okay, the person who cheated is probably a good one. And I would never obviously want to share this person's information. And I don't think anyone would have any idea who we're talking about, because I don't think anyone knew at the time that this person was cheating anyway. So hopefully we did a good job of not exposing this individual.
Yeah, honestly, hearing you talk about the failure case makes me think about how close I was to being a failure case.
I love it. I should have done that. That is the high road. Use yourself as the
You're really talking about me. I didn't have a cheating problem, but I can understand the mindset. My mindset is kind of the opposite of the curious person that does really well. The opposite of that is like I don't care about understanding it. I just need to get through this so I can get a good paying job.
yeah.
Which it's a bit shameful to say, but that was more or less my mindset at the beginning, and it didn't serve me well at all. Because then you're focused on not failing, which is distracting you from getting the actual skills. So I can.
That's so encouraging though, because here you are, right? Like what?
Yeah.
How did you transform into? Because you're definitely the curious person now. Like there's no doubt.
Yeah, it grew with time. And honestly, I think it partly took me being out of a boot camp scenario because, kind of to your point, like mine was also in person, and there was very much that pressure I felt of like, today is the lesson on, SCSS, and tomorrow is responsive design, and if you don't get SCSS, like, we're not coming back to it, so you gotta get it. And so just, the pressure of an in-person program. One of my favorite things about Parsity is that you always say that you can't fail, only quit. But when I went through boot camp, you very much could fail. And so,
yes.
And it was like that.
You weren't going to quit. You were going to fail far before, far
like
before
long
you quit.
before. Yeah, I was determined to not quit. But I was very worried about failing. And so, and especially when you get into the whole thing of like, I took a loan to be there, and so I needed to get through to just at least to pay the loan back. And so,
right.
It was just a very high pressure situation. So once I got out of that, and then over time, as I like got jobs and had to actually start doing it, there was still pressure because it's your job. But for me, over time, as I got better at being an engineer and got more confident in solving my own problems, then the curiosity was able to bubble up a little bit more, where it wasn't feeling like a pressure cooker all the time.
That's amazing, man. Well, it's encouraging to know that you can change, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's so funny, this side note, but that you mentioned the difference between being in person and online. Like, I completely forgot about that dynamic. Like, I forgot, because in the beginning when Parsity started, I got like probably the 50% of people I talked to were against the idea of doing an online code school because it was online. And like, I can't remember the last time I've talked to anybody who's like thought that online is a bad thing, or that in person's any better. And I think part of it's just because like work culture is now all online. So it's like, if you do an in-person boot camp and then you go work online, like it's a different experience, but it's more congruent with the way that a lot of work is going to be. Is if you learn online, you're probably going to be working online too, especially as a software engineer. Like you said, there used to be this barrier where you had to have some level of seniority before you were considered to be like a remote employee, but now like it's just default. But anyway, as a side note, funny to think about that difference.
It is.
And the benefits, far outweigh the costs. That's great. Okay, so the last one here is a story about someone who maybe kind of like you here. It's probably similar, right? Who, but I think your story probably went smoother than the ones I'm thinking about. I don't know. I'm thinking about somebody, and there's actually a pretty large category of individuals like this that I've got, which I think is probably the most encouraging, because I think most people, excuse me, I'm like burping on my mic.
No worries. I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. So, super side story. I don't know why I'm telling this, but I hope it's not in the curriculum anymore. But at first, in the Parsity curriculum, I was like, I think I spent probably 4 months or so just like in an office by myself, recording videos for hours and hours and hours, and I had to edit all of them by myself. There's supposedly one with me like cursing and picking my nose.
I love to see it.
It was actually not too long ago that someone pointed it out to me as Steve Hoosman. He was a student, but he was also a friend, and he like reached out to me and he's a hilarious person. Like he's like would do stand up for fun sometimes, and it was really funny. But and he just messaged me that, hey, this video has you like picking your nose halfway through and like cursing. I think I was just like angry, then I was like snorting and trying to like clear my nose and didn't realize I hadn't edited it out. So anyway, that's right. Burping on the podcast brought me back to that. Hopefully it's not in there anymore. I don't know. I can't be sure. Okay. So this is actually somebody who, and this could, I don't know. I'm always like super conscious of who I'm giving stories about, because I'd say, if I'm saying this because like I'm thinking of a woman in particular, but I don't want to like say, oh, because we have these great stories about these men and being successful. I'm not saying that at all. As two guys doing this, because as you can probably even listen to our episode history, I'd honestly say by and large the women have done better than the men in the cohorts. But this is a woman who I think this story is probably close to me because it was one of the early cohorts I ever did for my own boot camp. And I think I was really nervous about this individual story because she'd come in very eager, very responsible, like extremely kind, full of grace, communicated with us a ton. This was Project Shift early on. And she never got, she definitely got overwhelmed and flustered, just as anyone would who was struggling to learn how to code. But she never reached the point where she was like, screw this, it's all your fault, like this is terrible. If there was something that we did wrong, which we did a lot of things wrong back then, she would just tell us, like with calmness and honesty. But I'd say I used to have conversations with other people who worked at Project Shift and would say, okay, she doesn't have the aptitude of someone who is going to do well in this. And we took that on as like a lesson for ourselves. Like, oh no, someone like this shouldn't have made it into the program because she's not doing well. Like she's just not getting it. It's not clicking. Right. And back then I thought there was something that you had to have naturally in order to have aptitude. And now I think it comes back to like natural curiosity, right? What we just talked about. So I don't think she had natural curiosity for this. She wanted to do it because she was interested in like the career, and not just interested in the money, but she was really interested in the career and the culture and the environment of being part of software. But I don't think she had natural curiosity for like the code itself. And so when she graduated, she had a pretty long road before she found her first job. But I have to say that I think she found her first job based off of her like personality and like networking skills. She made some like genuine relationships and friendships with different people in the tech community that she was living in. I think she actually ended up moving outside of Durham, went to some meetups, and I think by her like pure tenacity, this company saw her as like, wow, we would just love to like have you be part of, like, this is someone we'd want to work with. And over time, like she grew into being an amazing software engineer and is still doing it today. And I think of her and a couple others who have this story to where maybe I thought in the beginning, like, wow, this isn't going well. But in the end, they proved the thing that we always say, which is if you don't quit, like it's inevitable, right? The job search process might take you forever. So even if you don't have the natural curiosity, if you don't have all these like features or characteristics of someone we think who is ideal for the program, if you don't have a history of being disciplined in your life and you get distracted by YouTube videos too much or whatever it is, like if you don't quit, like you can still make it, right? And so you just have to kind of take that your own risk assessment. But I think those stories are the ones that like touch my heart, for lack of better, less cheesy phrase. But who like are the warmest to me, because it's like, man, in that story, like the only thing you had was like just this passion to not quit, and it eventually pays off. And we had another student like this recently who he entered the program a long time ago and was kind of off and on. And I was just kind of, every time I'd see his name, I would kind of put my hand on my forehead, be like, oh no, I hope this guy makes it. Like, he's still here. Like, should he just give up? And he never did. And now, like, bam, thank goodness, because he's a software engineer and it's awesome. But all right, that's mine. You have one like this?
Yeah.
Besides yourself.
Besides myself, yeah. The person I thought of, it may be the person that you just mentioned. We have a few like this, honestly, where it's like it can never happen in an in-person program, kind of as we were saying, because you can't go at your own pace with an in-person program. So quite a few of this model, but one person I'm thinking of, and maybe the person you were just speaking about, is like someone that took, I think, over 2 years to do what was supposed to be I think he started out full-time and switched to part-time. But if he'd stayed full-time, supposed to take 4 months. It took 2 years. We have a rule where you have to pass all your evals, which are like, basically, if you're full-time, you have a big project at the end of every week for the first 8 weeks. And then the rest of it is building your final project and doing group projects. And so this person got through the curriculum, but had failed like at least 3 or 4 out of the 8 evals along the way. So basically, and we're like a year and a half in at this point, and this person was my mentee.
Oh, that's right.
So we were talking about the same person. It's kind of an epic story, honestly, because it's just, and this person for me embodied the like curiosity as highest ideal thing, but to like a degree that was almost harmful, where they had a hard time making progress if they didn't feel like they understood every single line of code, which is probably not going to be the case for anybody for a long time at the beginning.
Yeah.
But what that ended up doing, in addition to making it take 2 years, was that like this person finished the curriculum, then they had to go back and basically do half of it again because they'd failed half the evals, and then like same thing with the final project. Like, it took a really long time. But I think like stuff started to click because of just how methodical this person was. And yeah, there were a lot of times where I was just like, dang, man, like, and you hate to like discourage anybody, but there were a lot of moments where I was like, I'm not sure if this is actually the best fit. And this person proved me wrong, I think, which is super inspiring to see, because of this process of like having to go back over old stuff and being really methodical about understanding it. It eventually made sense. And I think we're talking about the same person, but employed as a software engineer now and doing it professionally. So, if
this individual hears this and discovers we're talking about him, I hope he would feel honored that we admire everything and not saying that you came in. Because I think also another point about this is a theory. Perhaps what we normally see, and I hope this is true, in people's journey is like the tip of the iceberg. Whereas like we see this little part where they're in the program for these few months. And, Megan, who does our career services, she really walks with them after the program. But we're kind of just seeing this one little snapshot. But I hope for most people there would be a foundation underneath it. So maybe like 2 years, I don't want to scare anybody to say like it's going to take you 2 years to become a software engineer, but for some people that's how long the journey is, of like first thinking about the job as a role. And so you might spend a lot of time before your code school teaching yourself, researching, learning things about the job, about programming in general, etc. And sometimes it can take that long. We just normally don't see like that full picture. So maybe with this individual, I don't know, I forget the whole story, but maybe we just got to see his whole journey, and he did it with us. So either way,
I mean, yeah, like it took me 2 years to become competent, I would say, even though I had a job before then. So it's kind of the same thing ultimately.
Yeah, no, it's true too. And I think the industry, I hate saying this because I don't know for sure, but I feel like in ways things have changed, right? I remember when I went through a boot camp, like most people who got jobs afterwards got jobs pretty quick because boot camp's like a whole new thing and people just didn't have a category for it. And so, like I could barely do, I was worse than 90% of our grads are right now whenever I came out of a code school. So it was like, I was still, I mean, if you were to like compare me with our current students, I was still like basically in the boot camp for a good 6 months after I started my first job, you know what I mean? Like right. Practically speaking. So yeah, it takes a long time too. Sweet man. Well, that's all my topics. I want to land the plane here on time, but did you have anything you wanted to hit before we do?
I don't think so. I think this was good. Good like kind of episode that allows us to kind of sum up a lot of different stories. And yeah, I think the point is like, especially like hope nobody would be offended, but especially with the last person, like the cool thing about getting to do this is there are so many inspiring stories where people are kind of underdogs and, you know, through persistence and grit, like end up changing their whole lives. And that's what's so cool about being in this line of work. So I hope that's what people take from it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I was like walking earlier thinking about what could we talk about? And that was what emerged on my brain is that you and I both, I mean, I think it's funny when I started, this is another tangent, but a friend of mine and I started this Web3 boot camp that didn't work out a while back. And one thing he'd always said to try and like market us is that I was one of the longest standing boot camp founders, and which actually made me feel like I was a failure because I'd, you know, still been doing boot camps for forever. But I think I have seen so much evolution like in the boot camp world that it's like sometimes I just need to stop and reflect of like, oh, we have all these stories, right? And I think all those stories could be really helpful for people to hear. And so maybe it means doing some more episodes with these folks in the future, because it's been a long time since we've done episodes with grads who could just tell their own stories. But I think I was just really encouraged thinking back through even the ones who were the scary stories that in the end, if you didn't quit, like it just has reigned true these last, gosh, it's been 10 years for me now since I've been involved in boot camps. You know, those last 10 years, it's reigned true. If you don't quit, it'll be okay. You'll make it.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, man. I'll see you.
See ya.
All right, that does it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about our online code school, Parsity, which we talk a lot about in this episode, visit parsity.io. It's parsity.io. You can learn from Peter and I and other smart people. Not saying that we're smart people. We're just people who've done this before a lot and think we can help you too. If you are just beginning your journey and you want to learn how to practice good habits, how to develop your skills in JavaScript, how to develop your network, and adopt a mindset that will help you become a software engineer through a bootcamp, visit our 30-day JavaScript program called Dev30. The website is dev30dev30.xyz.